Welcome to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. We feature top entrepreneurs and thought leaders from around the world, those who bring a global mindset and a unique perspective to their life and business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey, David Nilssen here. I am the host of this podcast. On the Future is Borderless, we connect with leaders from around the world who have what I like to refer to as a borderless mindset. And the purpose is to share ideas, new innovations, best practices, things that will help power growth in our personal and professional lives so that we can thrive in a rapidly changing world. Now, this episode is brought to you by Dahdah Talent. Dahdah helps businesses to source full-time, highly skilled workers from all over the world. And as a result, these companies can scale faster, increase margin, and improve culture. If you want to learn how to grow your business with offshore talent, simply visit dahdahtalent.com. All right. Well, I'm excited for today's show. Today, we have a really interesting guest. His name is JP Dahdah. He's the founder and CEO of Vantage Self-Directed Retirement Plans. Vantage administers to over $2.5 billion in assets while assisting investors to diversify their retirement savings into alternative investments like real estate and more. Over his 25-year career, JP has earned numerous accolades, including Entrepreneur of the Year by the Arizona Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and the Esteemed Most Admired Leaders of 2019, which was chosen by the Phoenix Business Journal. JP is not only a successful entrepreneur, but also an active philanthropist. In 2008, he founded Advance Guatemala, a charity supporting Guatemalans who are in need. And he contributes to the community through his roles in the Entrepreneurs Organization and the Scottsdale Art Board of Trustees. So JP, welcome to the Future is Borderless.
Hey, thank you for having me, David.
Cool. Well, this is an interesting one because I've actually known, and I share the audience, I've known JP for quite some time. At one point, I had started a company called Guyton Financial, which used to be in the self-directed IRA space, and we partnered with custodians like Vantage. And so I've known JP for a long, long time. Super cool to have you on the show. But I thought maybe we'd start with self-directed IRAs, the business that you're in and you spend a lot of time thinking about day in and day out. Can you talk a little bit about the backstory there? Like how did you get the idea? How did you start it? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, previous to this business, I was a registered investment advisor. So my business was to help people with their financial goals, financial situation. And, the genesis of Vantage was really one of my higher net worth clients coming to me one day and saying, "Hey, GP, I got this opportunity through a friend to invest in his real estate development deal." And my client was like 52 years old at the time. So he's like, I want to put $250,000 into this deal, but he's not going to give me the money back for about 5 to 7 years. It's really illiquid. And so I really want to use my IRA to do this. And I said, well, unfortunately, that's not something you can do. And you're 52, so you'd have to pull the money out and, pay taxes and penalties. And I basically told my client what I, with very much confidence, thought was the truth, right? I had been trained by a Fortune 100 company. I, had gone and gotten all kinds of certifications. And to the best of my knowledge, I was giving my client the right information. So I said, hey, I don't think that's going to be the right account. Let's work through some other things we can do to get this money into this investment. And he was just kind of relentless. He was like, God, I just don't understand why I can't do this. This is ridiculous. I was 27 years old at the time. So I think he was also kind of thinking, hey, maybe JP isn't experienced enough, if he doesn't have enough, hasn't been around the game a little bit too much. He's like, well, I want you to keep looking at, call the top people that and try to figure out if there's a loophole or something we can do. So I did that. And 2 months later, I'm still calling them, telling them, hey, nope, can't. I called JP Morgan, I called Goldman Sachs, I called my top people in New York, and they're just confirming what I've been telling you, right? And so we can kind of left it at that. And about 2 weeks later, I go to lunch here in town with an attorney that I was building a relationship with. We had several clients together. He was an asset protection attorney, and so we're sitting down, and this client was one of the clients that we were kind of thinking about getting some work with. And so I'm telling him the story, right? Like, my client just won't give up this idea that he could use his IRA. And so I'm sharing this with this attorney, and the attorney friend of mine, kind of thinks, and he goes, you know what? I'm a part of this group in Florida that does some offshore conferences and stuff for asset protection. But there's a friend of mine there who's an attorney, and I think he's heard of a company that does something like this. And so when I get back to the office, we'll call my friend up and we'll see what he says. And so, that was really the beginning. He went back to the office, just called his friend. He passed a website over to me. I went back to my office, go to the website. It says, buy real estate with your IRA. And my jaw dropped to my keyboard. And that was one of those, kind of moments of impact in my life, right? It was like, all kinds of thoughts, how did this happen? How is this possible? Here I am, an advisor, fieldly, most involved kind of level, trying to do what's best for my client. And I now feel like I'm giving him the wrong information. So that was really the genesis, and I kind of made my decision really that I wanted to be part of a solution and not part of a problem, that I felt the financial industry was really kind of set up, incorrectly. All of the advisors that are giving information to clients were really just telling them half the story and not giving them all the entire truth. So that's how Vantage was started. I just got very disenfranchised with what I realized was how the financial industry was set up and the kind of advice that we were kind of trained to tell people when it wasn't in their best interest. We weren't giving our clients all of the information just because, it wasn't our business model, basically, right? And so, I decided to start Vantage and kind of shifted from being an advisor to just being on the custody side, where we kind of became educators more than anything. Kind of started our awareness campaign, and as it's just, that was, when you try to tell the world that something exists that they didn't know, and everybody that gives them advice, professional, CPA, attorneys, financial advisors, every publication is, misinformed, and you kind of tell them, kind of perpetuating this misinformation. It's kind of tough to scale. And it's certainly, it's kind of a David and Goliath, I think, storyline, but there's a lot of people that build wealth in, outside of the stock market. And I feel that, people should know that they can, invest in other things, with their retirement account.
Yeah. It's so funny. I do recall back in the early 2000s when we were first starting Guidance Financial and talking about these types of concepts. And most of the advisors and even a lot of your tax professionals say, well, it's not possible. Now I think industry awareness is a little bit different, but back then I remember like you were fighting ignorance more than anything.
19 years later, people finally still figuring it out, but it's certainly a lot more, it's a little bit more, my vision was really that one day this would be, household, living room information that everybody, does this exist? It's like, what company should I use? Because this is what I'm looking to do. And that's really what I thought would happen one day if we got this right.
Awesome. Tell me just real quickly, what are like some of the most common use cases that you see? What are the things that people are buying more times than not?
With alternative assets, we define alternative assets as anything that's outside the stock market. Okay, let's just start there. But the most common asset class within our industry is real estate, of course. People love real estate, a tangible asset, and they buy it in a bunch of different ways. They buy it through entities, through limited partnerships, and LLCs when they co-invest with other people. Some of our clients, buy it directly. But as you can imagine, the amount of money you have in your retirement account really will define how you buy that real estate, right? You could obviously get leverage with your IRA, which a lot of people also do not know. And there are lenders that will lend to your retirement account. You can buy rental properties, with putting a certain amount of money down with your IRA and then getting a loan to your IRA to buy a property. But there's obviously specific rules, but the most common is, I would say, real estate. And then second to that would be private lending. And of course, in this environment, that's become very, very popular. Yeah. And the amount of baby boomers out there and the, amount of people that need to have a decent fixed income coming in, private lending has really become popular because, they can define their terms. They're basically the bank, if you will. They're the ones, they're using their IRA money to lend money to other people, and they can decide how much money they want to charge, the maturity, all the terms, and set up the structure. So People love that control. And, when the bond market is in the toilet, baby boomers, retirees need to figure out how to put, 50 or more % of their portfolios into a fixed income allocation. And when they hear about this, they really get excited about the fact that they can kind of, do a secure with real estate and do some other things with it. So I always say those are the two most popular. And then, of course, private equity. And I think people who are a little bit more, willing to take a little bit more risk and are accredited investors, those are the ones that are really kind of investing in private companies, private equity, venture funds, startups, angel investing, and those sort of things. Obviously, there's a couple of asset classes that always pop up as the hot new alternative. When the Great Recession happened, it was all about precious metals and gold IRAs and, buy your coins and your bullion, and then it was cryptocurrency, crypto IRAs became the thing and everyone wanted to buy crypto with their IRA. So there's a couple of, ups and downs that happen on the asset class side, depending on the market. But I think for everyday Americans that just want something outside the stock market, the first place they stop is real estate. And that's where a lot of wealth is ultimately created in this country and just in general. So, yeah.
Not surprising, I guess. You in your bio, I talked a little bit about, or I shared that you had been recognized as one of the most admired leaders in Arizona in 2019. I'm just curious, I always think back to what is that moment? I guess the question is, what is that moment, or is there a moment in your entrepreneurial journey where, something happened that had a profound impact on how you do business or how you think about building your business? And for me, I always go back to 2008 and some of the things that I learned going through that particular crisis. But is there a moment that you can remember where you learned a tough lesson, or you were sort of put your back up against the ropes and had to make some decisions that have sort of changed the way you think about business going forward?
I think I would say that when you're an entrepreneur, I feel that at least at the beginning of your journey, you really kind of, it's all kind of about you. What's my vision? What direction do I want to take this company? And you kind of think about, this is the culture I want to build. These are the things, this is the strategy that I want to execute. And it really seems a little kind of more thinking about yourself for a while. And I think that's kind of what I would call stage one of the company's cycle, is you're still kind of like, you want to push revenue, and it's like, you think revenue really matters, and you're kind of using it as a pump your chest kind of moment. Right. So I think that the aha moment really came when I just really, it really crystallized to me that it's absolutely not about me. And that I really work for my team, and that it's really, culture isn't what I think it is. It's what we make it, within the team that we have, and our shared belief systems and values. And so, even, when I had my core values at the beginning, it was JP's core values, aspirational. I hope my team that I eventually hire will connect with these things. But, over the course of that first stage, it's like, no, what are the behaviors that I'm seeing in my people that are our common ground, right? And so our core values evolved, and it became our core values, not just, kind of JP's aspirational things that I want us to stand for. So I think, and I don't know exactly the year, but I certainly feel like my leadership style and my behavior and kind of how I approach things was certainly not individual to me. Everything was focused on others, not just the client, but I'm talking about the team itself. And that was been pretty instrumental, I think, for me. And, even my team, those who have been here with me for that amount of time, they always kind of giggle and we kind of laugh about them witnessing this kind of transformation of, the younger JP into stage two. And now we're embarking on stage 3 of our business. So, I kind of think it's we, and then they, right? That's kind of the way I framed it with my team, is like, the first stage is I, and then we're kind of we're a team now, or we're doing this together, and you're kind of, locking arms. And as you evolve as an entrepreneur, you really want other talented people. And it's really, they are the ones executing. They are the ones coming up with the strategy. You need to find the talent that can really execute when you're no longer around, right? And really test that system And that's where we're entering right now. So I think understanding those dynamics in the business growth and the stages, I think has been pretty instrumental.
That's awesome. I always sort of talk about that journey that you're talking about as what makes you strong in the beginning makes you weak as you grow, right? At first, everything funnels through you, you're hands-on, you're in it, you're chief cook and bottle washer, but eventually you got to push authority and autonomy into the organization, right? And that's the transformation that you're talking about.
I've heard it was about, I want a flat organization, titles don't matter. I had this kind of pipe in the sky. I didn't want to be corporate. I didn't want to create these kind of like this ladder. I literally, my org chart was like, flat. Literally, that's what I was trying. And obviously, now we certainly cannot do those things. But it's funny how at the start, the visions of what you stand for, but what you also don't want to stand for, right? That kind of start creating these little beliefs that you think, you're trying to lead people towards. And I even tell people when I'm interviewing them sometimes, like, this is an entrepreneurial environment. And in my mind, that means a lot of things, right? And I'm sure in their mind, they're like, what does that mean? I don't know what, yes, we understand corporate environment versus entrepreneurial environment, but I don't think a lot of people who know any better, who have maybe been able to do both, understand the difference, right? I mean, what is an entrepreneurial environment if you've always been working for corporate America? You don't really know. I've learned some of these words that we use as entrepreneurs sometimes because we've had life experiences that kind of frame these thoughts and these, concepts. And then you try to bring people on and, they don't really know what it all means, I guess. And until they're living it, you know what I'm saying?
Totally. I love that. I love the idea of being a mature startup, right? You can be a mature organization, decades of experience, but still sort of cultivating this non-corporate, non-conforming environment. So tell me a little bit about, recently you guys embarked on this journey to sort of expand your team outside of the US. Can you talk a little bit about the circumstances that sort of led you to explore going borderless with your talent strategy?
Well, since we're in the financial service industry, I was very resistant. I've been always very resistant to having employees work from home. Even flex hours. We need to be here to serve our clients. Our clients, we're holding their retirement money. So I kind of felt that was always like they want to kind of us to follow the model, right? But then, of course, COVID happened and that changed everything, really. I mean, in 3 days, we had everybody working from home and kind of shocked the system. And so that really was, I said, the main opener because everybody was getting comfortable with people working from home. And then, from a leadership perspective, our two mantras at that time were decentralization and digital transformation, right? Because you're looking to hire people or people, we had onboarding and we had training and we had all these infrastructures, but they weren't set up for a model that had everybody not working in the office, right? So it was like kind of wartime leadership, right? Like I'm trying to tell my team, like, do we have this? We need to set this up. And they were like, oh my God, JP, like chill out. This takes time. And it's like, we're still trying to, serve our clients every day. And so it was an interesting learning opportunity there. But as that happened, and we started working on those things, we had external factors that were really affecting. COVID really had an effect on all of us, right? I mean, behaviorally, what we thought, our relationship to work, what we were willing and not willing to accept, people not wanting to come back to work, conflicting social and political. I mean, it's been a challenging environment to lead through, right? And so I would say that, and those external factors, also kind of forced more conversation and more strategic thinking around how we're going to get through this. And then the job market, went to crap, in my opinion. I mean, it was just, at least here, the US, it was very challenging to find, people. And now they're, finding people under the new under the new rules, right? It's like, well, now they're really being very selective, and companies are overpaying all kinds of positions, and so being a small business, that's really challenging to compete with, and to add it, I'm in a business, David, where the majority of my team is in what I kind of call a commoditized salary range, right? It's the 40,000 to, let's call it, $70,000 range. There's a lot of companies that hire people within that range. And it's like, so those are typically not, that's not a workforce that is, they've got their eye on a path and they're like going to be committed to this one industry or this one, thing. It's like, they're looking for work and they're looking for pay and they're looking for benefits, right? So, in these external factors, plus the job market, it kind of put us where, some people, left our business when we were trying to hire people back. They were, they would say they were committed and they would flip and say, oh, I just got another job offer, so they, all our core team was really struggling to trust. And that's one of our core values. Trust is a must, right? And they're like, we were spending time trying to onboard and now they're leaving, and it was very costly. So for all those reasons, I knew something had to change. I was like, this isn't working. We need to grow our business, and we can't this way. It's just so expensive. We can't do it. So that's ultimately what led me to calling you and exploring this and kind of, understanding, because again, I had my biases, right? We all have our biases about certain models. And I think our clients have biases as well. So really, that's been for me. It's like, okay, you got us to think differently, with a lot more comfort and maybe took away some of those biases when you kind of shared how you structured your business and what you gained from it in your own businesses. And then as my team got those kind of deposits of trust and found those people that we were working with, like, oh, these guys are great. They're smart. They're picking things up quickly. And then when you go outside the borders, sometimes I think one of the benefits is culture, just the country's culture and how people's life experience has just been different. And so we have found that really because we found ourselves having to do a lot less kind of meetings about people's lack of performance, meetings about not, just different reasons that we did not have to lead or hold people accountable to certain things, was something we were finding a tremendous benefit from having a team outside of the U.S. So really it wasn't so much just to cut costs. It was also, we found that the type of employees we were getting, they are like super committed. Yeah, they haven't missed work. I mean, they haven't taken a PTO day for most of them. It's like they're just in it, right? And so that has been awesome. So I don't know. Those are some of the things I think, like, over time. Now we're trying to get it where our clients can kind of remove some of those biases, right? So they don't care, I think, that if someone's working from home. But there's this perception that if someone is working from home in the Philippines, that somehow all their money is going to get, stolen from their account or something. So there's some security concerns. There's just, some people just, they can't think outside the box of the border. So whether someone's in Philippines, working in my office here or in some other state, that would be fine. But if the fact that they say, oh, I'm in the Philippines or, whatever country, that begins to, for us, we've had some clients that are not happy about it.
Yeah. It's funny. I kind of liken this a little bit to what we talked about earlier with self-directed IRAs. In the early days of that industry, the lack of understanding, the lack of awareness, led a lot of people to push back and say it wasn't possible or it was risky or what have you. And I think COVID gave us a tailwind in terms of work from home. And for some of us that are, I think, earlier adopters, it's also created this access to other international talent pools, but it's still going to take a while for the rest of the sort of community, industry, whatever you want to call it, to catch up. But I appreciate what you said, because I think, our vision has always been to lift up global communities by creating meaningful work. And if the work is meaningful, then people, the jobs are very much appreciated, and we are certainly seeing that. But, nothing is perfect. So I am curious though, like, how is it, like, what was the biggest challenge you faced as you were starting to, bring on some international talent, and you're trying to integrate different cultures. You got some people working in the office, some that are not. Like, what are some of the, like, what was the one or two things that were the biggest challenges for you guys to overcome before you sort of hit the gas and said, we're going to go all in?
Well, I feel like when you're looking, obviously, when you're hiring, you are looking for specific things out of the people that you're hiring, right? Whether it's experience, let's say it's, client service. You're looking for experience on the phones, right? But you're also looking for knowledge about what you do. And so us, that's been the biggest Achilles heel is, sure, we've got people who've got years of experience on the phone, but what is an IRA? What are the, we're trying, and they need to be educated at a higher, beyond what the guy, or the girl from Charles Schwab's service, because they're thinking of it from the Wall Street perspective of the, mutual funds and all these sort of things. We've got to have people who can talk about alternative investment strategies, make the person sound comfortable. Feel comfortable about that this is a company they can do business with because they understand the strategy I'm trying to deploy. They understand the process that I'm doing. I ask questions about rules, or I have questions about, can I do this and can I do that? So, the knowledge someone has to have on a specific topic is been challenging because they're starting from ground zero. And because of the amount of people that we needed to replace and kind of get into these key positions, you can't birth adults, right? The same way you cannot just magically someone all this information. Now AI is helping, and I know that there's at least now a way to improve our capacity of how to develop training and how to get information to people quicker, right? With a lot less burden, but it's still a lot to consume if you're a new person, especially from a new culture and a new topic. It's just a lot.
Well, it's funny. There's a lot of portable industries, right? But to your point, retirement plans as they exist in the US are different than anywhere else in the world. And so the technical knowledge is something that has to be caught up. You said something earlier that I just want to point out, and this is what I've found is the number one determining factor as to whether or not someone succeeds in an offshoring strategy. And that is how they onboard and train team members. Because most of us are used to being in an office where we just say, hey, sit next to JP, watch him for 2 weeks, pick it up by osmosis, you'll figure it out. We don't have the benefit of being that sloppy when we are in a hybrid or a remote environment. And so it really forces us to sort of level up in terms of how we train and onboard. If we do that, it can be very successful. If we don't, it can be very challenging. So
that second word, digital transformation, came up back in the code. It's decentralized. Okay, check mark. We decentralized. We're now, we have a decentralized infrastructure. However, you've got to go through all of that digitizing all that content, improving it, or you can't get that onboarding right. You won't get the training right. And so that's been, using Zoom and doing things. And where we're at right now is really not overtraining because, we have enough people where we're kind of, I think some of our processes are becoming almost more generalizing. And we want the whole team in this unit to be able to do kind of a lot of these different things, to not create silos. But now it's almost like, well, that's only elongating the training that someone needs to do because, if they have to know it all to do it all, it's just not so. We're now right sizing our training to specific rules and responsibilities, and then so that's kind of where we're at with that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, we did something similar, and I've done this a lot with many of our clients where we help sort of bifurcate a process and start with sort of like, here is the entry level work that's 50% of our customers, and then you start to move them up to sort of what I would call advanced or more complex plans or duties. So, hey, let's talk a little bit.
It's this mess. And before we move on, when you have going to a borderless model is, you'll find that there's specific type of talent in certain regions of this country, right? Like every, that 65% of, KPMG's workforce was in the Philippines or something like that. So there's a lot of accounting, there's a lot of finance, there's a lot of, risk management, audit, work there. And so, okay, great. Both are transitioning really well into our business.
Yeah.
But we also need people here, right? So there's a combination of, we cannot everybody be from somewhere else. So we've got to find this mix of what are the roles that we need to have in person, and the challenge sometimes with that, you want someone in person, but those people, their COVID experience, they're still wanting hybrid. They're still wanting to still work. So it's like diluting a little bit of the culture and the vibe that we have traditionally had at Vantage and been very proud of. It's like, okay, it's kind of, sometimes I walk around here and it's like, whoa, the energy's been sometimes gets sucked out of the building, if you know what I mean. So some of that stuff are some key considerations for people, is you're finding that right tone, to the right mix of in person, but actually literally in the office, so that not the entire culture is just kind of,
Digital nomads.
a little bit lifeless, if you will.
It is so much harder. It's funny, like I think the hybrid environment actually creates some of that pressure too. I always tell people, I'm like, look, I'm a fan of being in the office. I'm a fan of being out of the office. In between, you pay for both and you have to do both. And that is just, it takes extra work, right? And it's, that is something you pay for both, and you got to be best in class at both. Let's talk a little bit about some of the work that you do outside of Vantage. I talked a little bit about your nonprofit, Advance Guatemala. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is? Like, how did you come up with the idea, and what is it that you're specifically trying to do with that nonprofit?
So, I'm a native Guatemalan. I moved to the U.S. when I was 8 years old, and my majority of my family, we moved, and then my immediate family, my siblings, and my mom moved back to Guatemala. And then, of course. And so I was the only one that stayed in the U.S. besides obviously my dad, and he got remarried. He was in Ohio, and so aside from that, I was here. So I would go back to Guatemala, back and forth. And one of those trips, I kept noticing that every time I went to Guatemala, there was an airplane full of people doing philanthropic work in Guatemala. They'd see people wearing their T-shirts, and we're going to go serve the people. And it just kind of like, I'm like, I'm from Guatemala, and I'm not doing enough, really. And I was at a point in my life where I kind of, as I reflected, I was like, I can do more. I should be doing more. And so on the flight back from that trip, I just decided I want to be intentional about my philanthropy, and I'm going to start a nonprofit. Being an entrepreneur, maybe that's always the first thing, is I'm just going to start my own thing. But I knew that I didn't want a typical model. In my understanding, I was like, look, there's enough nonprofits, right? An adding one isn't going to make a big difference here. And a lot of them need similar things, right? They're all raising money. They're all competing for dollars from donors. So my model is really a collaborative model. I started a 501c3, but we don't have our own projects. We don't have our own cause. I looked at how countries are developed and how they're structured, and there's 4 main pillars that every society, every community has, right? Education, healthcare, housing, and economic development or entrepreneurship, right? So I took those 4 pillars and I said, we are going to be dedicated to doing basically due diligence. We're going to go and collaborate with nonprofits that exist, that are doing work in Guatemala and in one of these 4 pillar categories. And we're going to find the ones that we believe have the most sustainable projects and are doing the best work. And then we're going to come to them and then we're going to ask them, what do they need? If they need money, then we would go raise money specifically for them to add more fuel to their work. If they needed contacts in Guatemala or relationships, I felt like human capital was where I could add value, because I had relationships in the US and I had relationships in Guatemala. So I felt that the best thing I could bring to the equation was some of that, kind of multi-country relationship value and capital. But at the same time, I have a model where, I had a for-profit business, so I couldn't dedicate and build another team, for just a nonprofit. So we have no staff. We just have our board of directors, and we look to identify these collaborative organizations, and we pick projects, and we raise money and do basically whatever they need. And so we've been doing that for since 2008. And again, it's for me, it's really that the intentionality of my philanthropy. It keeps me committed to. You can't keep a 501c3 if you don't do anything, JP. So it forces me to do work, really, to do not only help, and then obviously, you're doing this with your friends, or you're doing this as you're trying to raise money and create awareness for these causes. I love going to Guatemala with the people that I love, and working and doing these, and kind of putting that energy out there. So maybe get them to think about their philanthropy a little bit too. And our corporate strategy here at Vantage is to serve others. So I think that two phrase strategy is really, it resonates. And it's really about serving other people, man. That's where I'm about.
Yeah, I love it. It's funny. This reminds me of something. I was actually writing an article recently, and I was talking about like the importance of collaboration, and doing some research. I came across this story about wild dogs, right? So, you have tigers, which are the strongest, largest big cats on the planet, but they're their own king because they're by themselves. There's very little collaboration, and they're very ineffective because they're by themselves and they're not built for endurance. The idea with wild dogs is they actually are successful more than 85% of the times when they're hunting, because they do what's called persistent hunting. Highly cooperative. Everybody has a role. Nobody's king. It's made for endurance. And it's intended. Their sort of philosophy is that none of them are competing with each other, but if they collaborate, they can get more accomplished. And so, as you were talking about that, it kind of made me think you have the wild dog strategy for nonprofits.
Not just kind of a little showroom of other nonprofits that are doing just great work. We get to showcase them, and when we talk to them and we say, "Hey, can we raise some money for you?" They're just kind of like, "What?" What? They're like, they're not used to it, right? They're used to competing and not collaborating. So I think that's what's worked, at least for us.
Awesome. Well, I know we've got just a few more minutes left, so just a couple of quick questions. One, I want to talk about the idea of work-life balance. So, here you've got a successful organization, you give a lot to EO, you have your own nonprofit for Guatemala, and you're a husband and father of two. So how do you think about balancing all of those things so that, nobody loses at the end of the day?
I honestly, I don't believe in balance. Balance is something that seems to me like have equal. Everything has to be kind of an equal part. I'm a believer that entrepreneurship is life. To me, it's just life. There isn't like this other thing that it is. For me, it's everything I do, right? It's like, to be an entrepreneur, as you've got to manage your family. You've got to have your personal time. Excuse me. And of course, work on your business. So for me, it's really about living a life of priority, being crystal clear about what your priorities are at the present moment, and then blocking time, the allowable time for that priority in your life, which isn't going to be balanced. Vantage, right before COVID was my fourth priority. I was, we had people in place, things was running very well. I was actually trying to get myself out of the, kind of testing. How does it look like when JP's really not around, to see what were the key urgent things I needed to pay attention to. And so now it's like number, 2. Yeah. And so, this changes, your life priorities change. And we started our business, David, I'm sure you're like, oh, this is my baby. Like, I gotta work. Everything's I gotta work, right? Well, yeah, there's no balance there. But so I believe I'm very disciplined, I guess, in my life. I'm a planner, but I'm also very intentional with my calendar. One life, one calendar. I'm very clear. I create little, what I call flow formulas. I have my little flow formula. Being my flow means I have to be spending a certain amount of time in the things that matter most to me. And I get very honest with myself and my spouse and anybody that's important to me about what those priorities are, because they're not going to be their same priorities. And so I think one of the big, it's kind of been a little bit of a life hack for me, but I think the challenge for most people is, you have a partner who demands what they believe is the amount of time that you should give based on their perception of what they need. Well, if my wife wants to see me 7 days a week and have quality time with me, she's going to be upset a lot, right? And so, Right. And so we've got to be able to have conversations. But, for me, it's 4 times a week. It's family time. I have a date day with my wife once a week. I have, so I created these little, almost like these time blocks that make up where I'm in my flow of all the things that I need to be happy, to feel fulfilled. So that if I die today, I can say that I was at least, trying my best to work at the highest frequency on my energy. And it's worked really well and once I got that into place, my wife was doing it, and then we did it as a family. We block our entire year up a year in advance. We have a ritual. We block everything out so that we know everything's kind of when the canvas is empty, right? When the calendar has nothing in it, you look far enough ahead, there's really nothing in it. So you put it in there. And then, so if you put your priorities in there, then it's easy to say no to a lot of things that just distract and get you busy for busy's sake, and basically waste our most important currency, which is time. So for me, that's how I approach, I guess, life balance is just make it whatever imbalance you need to be in your flow, get clear about what that is and communicate it to the people that it affects, and then protect that time like the thing that right now you're protecting over everything else, because that's the reality. Your behavior, you can say, oh, my wife is, my kids are super important. You're not spending any time with them. So that's just lie you're telling yourself. And so and them, and they feel it, it just becomes conflict, it becomes resentment. It becomes something that they emotionally then have to deal with. Like my dad was never around. And, I felt some of that stuff with my dad. So it was like, I just want to be honest about, my behavior is going to tell the world what matters most, because that's what I'm putting my time into. And so as long as I'm crystal clear and protecting that time for those things, I feel like I can sleep at night knowing that at least I'm being honest about it.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think we'll leave it there. We've been listening to JP Dahdah, the CEO and founder of Vantage Self-Directed IRAs. JP, where can people go to learn more about the work that you guys do?
Sure. VantageIRAs.com is our website. VantageIRAS.com. And advance.org if you want to learn more about our nonprofit.
Cool. I'll put both of those in the show notes, but thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks, David. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Future is Borderless podcast with David Nilssen. Be sure to click subscribe to future episodes so you can hear from more top entrepreneurs and thought leaders. And we'll see you again next time.